I should turn on the microphone. Oh, this one's different. I'm so sorry. This is the first time I've used this one, and it sounds very different. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Facilities Committee to order at 6:31 p.m. Can I get an approval on tonight's agenda? Oh, roll call first. Oh, called order and roll call. There we go.
Furtado,
Here.
Hanover,
Here.
Harper,
Here.
Ingram, Locke,
Here.
Van der Steernot, Wilson,
Here.
Sherlock.
Here. All right, now can I get an approval on tonight's agenda? Locke, and second?
Second.
All right,
Or whoever did it, yeah.
Hanover Friedman had second. Okay, approval of the minutes from November 1st meeting? Oh, we need to vote on the agenda, okay. Sorry, first meeting as chair. Okay. Approval of agenda, we did the approval and second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Beth Vanchner not just came in. Now we'll do approval of minutes from the November 1st, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Harper? And Locke will second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I don't know if there's any public participation today. I haven't seen any slips. No, it doesn't look like we have anybody who wants to speak. Any board communications for today? No, seeing none. We can move on to new business. We have first the final update on ITB 2021-003 Satellite Jail HVAC replacement.
This is Richard Van Noot from GHR, our engineers for this project. For those of you who are not aware of it, the project was to replace the HVAC systems at the satellite jail. All of the systems were antiquated, original to the building. It's a big energy user, and most of the reason is because of the HVAC system. Basically replacing 4 air handlers on the roof and their associated condensers, several boilers, and 2 large chillers, which is a change in the system. Then we went from basically a DX unit that does both heating and cooling to heating, and then the chiller supply the cold water for the AC. This project was started and contracted in May of 21. And as some of the returnees to the committee know, it's been a topic for conversation. Once the contract was let, notice proceed given, the bid amount, low bidder was Davis Houck at $1,439,000 and some change. And an additional contractor was Alpha Controls for digital controls being brought into the building. I skipped that part and telling you what goes into the process to the building. Anyway, through a number of supply chain issues and problems, both here in the U.S. and worldwide, we were delayed by well over a year on our air handlers. That chiller did take some time, but it was a little less than a year. Unfortunately, we finally got all of our components by middle to late summer of 22, and you can't put air conditioning units and air handlers into a facility that needs air conditioning during the summer. So we had to wait till the fall, but it's been virtually completed. On your desk actually is a copy of a punch list and some photos. I'll let Richard kind of take over from here and give you an update on what he's learned today and talk about the punch list.
When it comes to the When it comes to the punch list, it's actually fairly straightforward, as you can see. What we've gotten to is essentially just back into the project work. All of the air handlers have been replaced. That was completed towards the end of November. They spent a lot of the early December time kind of bringing the boilers online, making sure that the hot water system was running, getting the pumps operating, things such as that. At this point in time, we're down to, like I said, mostly the minutia of the project. The biggest thing kind of holding right now is the installation of the piping and the ductwork system. That's actually in process and should be completed here shortly. After that is completed, there's some minor balancing that needs to be taken care of at the air handler systems. The control contractor will actually come in then and make sure that they have all the systems properly under control and do some final testing on that. There will be a training system that has to be taken care of with the county's workers. That way that they know kind of how to operate the system on their own as you go through. When that's all said and done, it's essentially just a matter of the contractors handing over owner and operation manuals to where the county can kind of do stuff as necessary on their own. The hope at this point in time is to kind of finish this up in the next couple weeks and put everything to bed. So right now we're sitting in pretty good shape. Like I said, the big thing is the installation, but that moves fairly quickly once you get a couple guys on board. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
It's great that we finally got this one about done, but on general, are supply issues improving any? Because we have several projects coming up.
I can't speak specifically to anything specifically because that's just the way the world works nowadays. I will say in general, I have seen improvements. It feels like we're at least seeing better. We spent essentially most of last year watching supply chain issues get worse. So that at least makes me feel better. Now, of course, everybody knows that all it takes is for one part of the project to fall behind for things to happen, but I'm at least seeing the back end of the hump, hopefully.
I have more of a process question. So once you're done with all of this, is then Dana, do you do like a walkthrough with the punch list and just sign off on it? Is that how? Okay, I just was curious.
We will sit down with Richard and Chris Smith, our building grounds manager. We'll actually walk through the project with the contractor, the person who's in charge of it, and review the punch list. We will also have, once they deliver all the specification books on the equipment, we'll have a training session for our people because our folks take care of the equipment. We'll issue, PMs on changing filters, looking into the systems, things that you do throughout the year. So it's important for our folks to know what's going on. I'll also bring up a point that I think's pretty good, and it was a very good idea with this project, is that we've got some overload. We have greater capacity in each of the pods, basically, than is necessary for the pod. Was it a little bit more expensive? Maybe, but in the long run, what we are able to do is if we have a problem with any portion of the system, one system can handle the whole building. Now, it's not going to make it, 68 or 70 degrees when it's 100 degrees out, but it'll be 78 to 80. So that's important. Heating as well. And the same issue with water. If we got a boiler that goes down in one area, we can feed it from the other side. So the redundancy factor, I think, is a huge asset to this project and to the building. We're going to make sure that it's being done on the new portion as well.
Do you have any statistics or figures on energy efficiency and what the difference is going to be after these renovations in terms of what we'll be saving?
Richard can comment on the efficiency differences, I believe, on the equipment. It's a bit of a guess, but we can take a stab at it from the supply side, we'll have to look at the units that are used versus pricing, just because their prices increase from year to year, so. But we can take a look at that. I don't have the figures out, but we'll take a stab at that.
First off, with the punch list, just to kind of touch back on that. When I performed the initial punch list walkthrough to create what you have in front of you right now, that was actually created with Chris Smith during the walk. So it was one of those things that I was able to actually get his comments if there was something that he didn't approve of, or there's some issue that I wasn't aware of. We were able to take care of that at the time. With regards to energy savings on the project, this project was actually applied for to act on energy through Ameren to actually receive incentive dollars, and that was performed by Alpha. And what Alpha has to do with that is they use the previous utility bills, a model of the building, and they make the model of the building match the utility bills. So they know they have a solid handling of how the building was operated prior to the project. They then take and they put in new efficiency measures based upon new equipment and the application of setbacks, turndowns, anything that they can do to try to save energy. They use that to actually create an energy savings calculation. It's not something that I personally have, but it has been used. And then they use that energy savings calculation, and they have to show a certain payback to Ameren in order to receive the incentive dollars. So this wasn't an energy savings measure that was just kind of done as a we hope that we're doing better with these higher efficiency boilers and these higher efficiency chillers. This was actually a measure that was, like I said, calculated and looked at. So it wasn't just a shot in the dark in this case.
Yeah, that, excuse me, the Ameren incentive has been applied for, was applied for when the project was started. We've had to continue to move the end date back because of the delivery, but that has been done. Ameren's been contacted. That incentive is approximately $122,000 that will be paid, which is, as I've kidded with GHR, that's really where their fees are coming from. So it's important to make sure we get that.
There, how's that? Couple questions. Hey, thanks for being here. What is the date of the balance test? What day is that?
The balance test is actually currently in the process of being
It's in process.
scheduled. So it should be hopefully in the next week or two to come in and do the final balancing. The balancer, in terms of, because what the balancer comes in is basically just verifying air flows through the air handlers, water flows through the pumps and through the various pieces of equipment. The balancer has been on site already once to do a preliminary balance where there were a few issues that came up, which is common to any project. Those minor issues were addressed, and after those were addressed, now it's time to have the balancer come back in and do a final balance. So that the hope is to have them back in the next couple of weeks. It's just a matter of getting the contractor to get that scheduled and back on site.
So it's not scheduled.
No,
And why is it not scheduled?
it's a matter of getting the minor issues that they had taken care of in terms of making sure that the boiler, making sure that the pumps are operating properly, making sure that the chillers and the boilers are operating properly, making sure that all of the tie-ins were done correctly. There was also a bypass in the system that we had to remove. So getting all of those things done to where when we know that whatever our balance is true to the final measure, we can do a preliminary balance and make sure that we're close. That way we can at least operate the building. Because if we're close, we know we can get heating, we know we can get cooling, and we know we can get water throughout the systems as necessary. But in order to know that we're actually balanced to design, we have to make sure that any of these minor issues are taken care of to where the balancer can get back on site. Part of the issue, of course, is just holiday season. It's trying to get a contractor scheduled to do anything during the last 2 weeks is nearly impossible. So now that we've taken care of that and we've gotten past that, the balancer will now be scheduled. And that's a conversation I'd had with the contractor, Davis Houck, already this morning. So it's not a matter of pushing it farther down the road, it's just a matter of getting them on site to get it taken care of.
Why was the balance valve removed?
Which balance
You
valve?
said there was a valve removed?
There
or
was a
replaced?
bypass.
Bypass, why was
The,
that?
the issue has to do with the way the bypass was tied to the fact that there used to be two systems. There was a hot water system in the south penthouse, and there was a hot water system in the north penthouse. To go with the new system, and in order to have the system ready to switch over, basically, due to the fact that we're dealing with a housing pods that have inmates in them, we had to be able to switch over from one system to the other. We couldn't take the old system down, leave it down for 2 months, and then bring the new system on board. So in order to do that, we went ahead, there's a new penthouse that was built on the roof. The new hot water boilers were placed in the penthouse. The new distribution water systems were placed in the penthouse. And then the hot water system was put in to go across the roof. To put the new hot water piping was put in across the roof. With the new hot water piping across the roof, the bypass that goes underneath the roof was no longer necessary. However, we had to have it in place for a little bit in order to keep the old system operating. We had a minor, probably about a week and a half time, where we had to have the old system operating and the new system operating because we didn't have all the air handler switchovers done. But when the balancer was out here to do the pre, that bypass was still in place. We verified that we had enough water to keep the system operating, to heat the building and keep the inmates comfortable. However, we now have to meet final design criteria. The bypass was taken out of the system. We are now fully operating on simply moving the hot water from the boiler through the penthouses and across the piping on the roof. But now that means that we have to rebalance the water system.
So that was a planned event on the bypass valve, or was
Yes.
that meant? Okay. Has the installation actually started, or is it?
Yes.
Okay. And you
Yep.
think that's going to be finished when?
The hope of the conversation I had with the contractor is that they have multiple workers for the insulating company on site. When I was on site to do the punch list, they had done a large portion of the installation. The hope is that they complete the insulating either this week or next week, just depending on how much work they have to complete.
So if your hope is not fulfilled, is that more cost?
No.
Okay. And your hope is because you have no certainty what the contractor can or cannot do or when they'll do it?
The hope is just based upon the amount of work that is left to be completed, the amount of workers that they have on site, and the conversations that the contractors had with his sub. Their understanding is that that is where we stand right now, is that the hope is that they'll be done in the next 2 weeks.
So related to the balancing and the controls, is there any issues you think that may or may not happen?
At this point in time, we essentially have the building up and operating on the new systems.
So it is operating now? It's operating now?
Yes.
Okay.
It's up and operating in the new systems. It's not a matter of do we think the building is going to have any issues tied to that, because the air handlers are operating, the chillers are operating, the pumps are operating, and the boilers are operating. So we feel pretty good that the system is working. That's not the issue. The issue is if we don't balance to design, either our air flows or our water flows are too high and we're wasting energy in the system, or our air flows or our water flows are too low. And if they're too low, then that means that when we hit a design day, which might be negative 10 degrees or 95 degrees, then we don't have what's necessary to make sure that we keep all the occupants comfortable.
All right. Well, thank you, Richard.
Not a problem.
Appreciate it.
No other questions? All right. Thank you, Richard. Can move on to ITB 2022-009, satellite jail consolidation.
Yep. We included in your packet information relative to the draft agreement that was put together by Restack Reed for PJ Hoor, general contractor. Contract price is $22,228,000 357. Typically, we use an AIA contract for these larger projects versus the smaller ones that we do. Since we added a PLA agreement to this project and to the bid documentation, I felt it was time that we again look at it with our state's attorney. Barb Mann looked at it about 4.5 years ago. Barb's now been replaced by Matt Panic. So I forwarded it off to Matt for a review and his comments. I've attached his communication in there. He had a few changes that he would like to see, but minimal. And that's been forwarded off to Restack Reed. Talked to them this morning. They're all kind of back in the office today, like a lot of folks, picking up their email and catching up. So he hoped to, or they hope to, have the contract done and delivered to PJ Her by Thursday of this week. It's kind of important to get the contract going because the contractor can't get started, can't order, can't really do anything until that's in place. And then, of course, we need their insurance and bonding information. So there's a little bit of work to be done that before we can really sit down and have a pre-construction meeting and go over all the fine details with them. So, but that's kind of where it's at right now. As soon as we get the contract back and signed, we will establish a meeting with the contractor here on site, and then hopefully have a little more information to report back, and maybe a framework of a schedule for this work to be started, at least a framework for it so we know, and can report back at next month's meeting. Questions? Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you so much. It's the red light, got it. Red should be stop, right? Shut up, don't say anything else. But, hey, thanks for your report. So, do you think they'll start work this month, next month, or what do you think? 3 months from now, 6 years from now?
Well, I don't think that they're going to be starting during the winter. I
Okay.
think we've got to wait until we get a point where not every day the ground is frozen. We've got to get foundations in. Yes, I understand that you can add chemicals to concrete to make it dry faster and put blankets on it, but it's still touching the ground and it's cold, so we really probably need to wait until middle or later part of March would be the earliest that I would see us getting started. But I think what's really important is to sit down with them and go through everything again. They've got to get their equipment ordered. They got to contact their subs, and contract with them. The subs have to get their equipment and supplies ordered. That will also give us some indication about time frame. As we were, getting ready and working with architects and engineers on this project, because of the delays that we saw with the satellite jail HVAC project, we're asking questions. What do you think about the supply chain? A lot of these delays are the pandemic, but a lot of them are also computers and chips and boards that aren't made here in the U.S. yet, and they're hard to get. So we'll know more once the subs and the general kind of gets a handle on the supply chain issues, and that's when the true schedule will probably be put together. I'll give you, for instance, I know 6 months ago on our County Plaza project, as we're working through and trying to design the HVAC system with the engineers, one of the things for the building is going to be a whole building not battery backup, but generator. When we looked at the size, what we need, and we looked at what's available, it was 56 weeks delivery from date of order. That's kind of a bit of a problem. There is a new generator in this project as well. My understanding, talking from some of the contractors here locally, is that they're seeing improvement. You know, can they define that? Probably not, but, you know, they're seeing things get to them a little bit faster. But bottom line is we really won't know until we sit down, contracts in place, and folks have had an opportunity to start ordering materials.
All right, thanks. So big risk there then, huh? You don't know the subs and you don't know when or what will be ordered?
As we meet with the contractor, after the contract is signed, we will know. I mean, we have a pretty good idea who their subs are now, but they're not under contract with PJ Hur yet. So,
Okay,
but we'll sit down with them
Yeah.
and give you updates along the way.
thanks.
Some of these questions are just like, Stephanie's new to this committee, so just wants to know how it works. I was reading about change orders. So is there a threshold to which like change orders have to come before us, or did they have to like go above 10%, or does this body ever have to do anything with change orders? Is that something your shop takes care of, or do we ever have to vote?
First of all, I don't like change orders.
No, nobody does.
And these guys know that. I prefer that there aren't any change orders. But sometimes stuff pops up and then you get surprised and you got to deal with it. We typically have not brought changeovers just to the committee because, frankly, they're not that much usually. If it's a big number, I'll bring it to the group, but I also can't slow the project down because of a time lag in trying to get to a meeting. What I'll do is I'll inform the chair, the vice chair, Steve will be on board and know what's going on. I can kick out an email to the committee, but I mean, in general, again, I don't like change orders. That's just kind of a bad word for me. And let me go back. I know that there's, 5 of you, are fairly new, and please ask questions. That's the best way to get informed, and I'm not afraid to answer any questions. So just, ask away, and we'll try and help you out.
One other quick question. So I really, with the goal, some of the goals of the PLA were to add more diversity to the project, and I really appreciate all the work that you and Steve and a lot of other folks did in order to get the subcontractors. That was fantastic, and I appreciate it. The other piece of it, though, was labor participation, and so I don't expect y'all to answer this question now, but maybe at a future meeting, maybe the February, March meeting, if you could let us know how you're going to, I just would be curious to know. I think the goals are 15 women and 20% men. I'm going to be honest, if they could hit 15% women, I'll faint dead on this floor. 20% men is probably, or 20% minority is probably easier attained. But I do want to know, I definitely want to hear from y'all, how often you're going to have them report and how that's going, right? Just to be blunt, some of this is for us to understand, to assess how we're doing on these next two projects. But I just want to make sure that you let us know, how you're doing it. Are they going to tell us monthly? Are they going to tell us quarterly? And then also report those numbers to this committee on, I'm not saying every month, but on occasion. I don't expect you to have all that worked out right now. I know this is the first time we've ever done this, but probably this contractor's had to do it on other state jobs and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure that's on all of our radar screen.
I've actually thought about it. I think the easiest way to do it is probably on a month-to-month basis. As the contractor submits their paperwork for payment, they have to supply a list of, who worked, how long. And so we'll sit down with them, again, after the contract's signed and talk to them about including, I think, those kind of numbers with their submittal for pay applications. And
you are more than welcome to tell me that if this is a bridge too far. It's not in the PLA, but if they're reporting all that, if they would be willing to, I think we just have to ask them if they'd be willing to report on whose county folks that are from the county on the job. I'd be super interested in that. If you know, I don't think we didn't put that in the PLA, so I don't know if they would be willing to do it. But maybe in the future that might be something we want to do.
Do you mean like county resident versus
Yeah.
out of county? Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting for us to know on our jobs, are we putting our folks to work? I would be super curious about that. And again, if we can't do it for these jobs, that's okay. I think at this point it would be more of a favor asking the contractor because we didn't require it. So but I do think down the road, that's something in the, for future projects. We can't do everything all, but to me, that's as important as anything else.
Yeah, while you were saying that, I'm just thinking about how would you try and gather that information? Because when you sit down and you give your information that you're starting a job, what county you live in is generally not on that question.
They'll have to pay, the subcontractors will have to pay their folks. So they'll theoretically, that paycheck is going somewhere, so they would be able to track it.
I get that, but again, I don't know that I'm just thinking about our own HR folks here, and, when I signed my stuff, it didn't ask what county I lived in. I put Champaign, but, you could live in a small little town outside and be in the next county over. So it's something we'll bring up, okay? I do not know that we'll have any clout to make that happen this particular contract, but we'll work on it.
No other questions? Oh, Ellie.
Just a really quick technical newbie question. What does AIA stand for, the type of contract? Like, what is specific?
Yeah.
Sorry?
American Institute of Architects. I'm going to repeat it into the
Thank you.
microphone.
I had the same question too, so great. I really like Stephanie's idea because that would be a benefit to our county to say that we have these major projects and we're employing workers out of our own county. That would be a really good PR move for the county, just an item to agree with. And then as far as change orders, I hate change orders too, but it's inevitable that you're going to have them. It happens. So Stephanie's questions are really good, and I suppose you've already managed what the threshold is that the architect that you agree with is going to allow that change order to occur. And if there's a timing and a schedule issue, then the architect, if he was on top of his job, he would probably know that, right? And let us know ahead of time.
Sorry. Sometimes they come up fairly quickly. Oftentimes they do a request for information.
Yep.
When that comes back with the price, then the architect will send that, or engineer will send that to me, and we'll have a conversation and deal with it. I'm not sure, what the time frame normally is. I've had them where we've had 2 weeks to kind of think about it. And then we've had some that come in that, this is a big we need to take care of this immediately.
Yep.
Let's get a price,
Yep.
and then we need to move forward. So, but again, I'll report to, I think, the chair and the vice chair and the executive, and we'll talk that through, and then I can send out an email certainly to the facility committee.
All right. Looks like next up we have Carla Smalley from Bailey Edward to talk about ITB 2022-008 County Plaza renovation project.
While she's powering up the computer over there, just to let, again, some background information, the county purchased the County Plaza building located at 101 East Main Street in Urbana, across from the old courthouse building, the county courthouse building. It's approximately 90,000 square feet on 6 floors. roughly 15,500 square feet per floor. The bones of the building are in pretty good shape. The HVAC system is awful, but we're planning on replacing that entire system. Needs a new roof. And with the bids, how they came in, which were very good, we're also able to fix one of the major deficiencies of the building, which is the exterior glass skin of the building. Those pieces of glass are 4 feet by 12 feet. You can't get them up in an elevator. Never mind the fact that they have to be installed from the outside. They're original to the building. All the gaskets, or I should say a large percentage of the gaskets that go around the window to keep moisture and Mother Nature out are shot. And they're outdated. They don't make any replacements for them. Anytime you deal with one of the windows up high, you got a scaffold. There's a weight limit on the deck, on the parking deck. So the system that we are looking at putting in is going to reduce the profile of the window to about 2 by 4. Yes, it's going to be more metal, but you'll be able to replace the windows from the inside, which will be a huge savings. So we've spent an exorbitant amount of time with Bailey Edwards in programming the building. We've spent easily 4.5 months, probably a little bit longer, programming. We sat down with each of the department heads multiple times, whether it was Zoom meetings in person in their office, phones, emails, you name it. We had conversations. Walk through their current space, listen to their needs, we would ask questions about what they needed for the future, the foreseeable future, 5, 10 years. Is that different? I mean, where do they think change in their operations will come? To try and get an idea of how we can put them and build them into the building. We are restructuring walls and doors, so this is an easy time to sit down and try and design space that is smart and efficient, easier accessibility to the public. So most of that's been done. It took a long time. At the same time, Bailey Edwards and GHR Engineering were trying to design the building. And of course, the programming kept lagging, so it took a while, but it was finished. Anyway, we're at the point, we got, pretty good bids. We felt we had 4 bidders come to the table. Unfortunately, 5 minutes after we opened up the bids, one of the bidders came in and went, "We made a really big error. We can't do this. We have to pull our bid back." And they did. They were significantly lower by several $1 million. So the next lowest bidder was Braun Russo at $18,825,000. And that's, when we bid this, we also bid, and you can take a look at this, I'll send it around. We bid it with a number of things in mind. First of all, a straight low bid, and then we also made them give us pricing with the MBE and WBE that we had asked for. We also had about 10 alternates that we wanted priced out. One of the alternates is doing the glass or the glazing work. That was actually, I think, number 1. And then there were 4 additional glass. If that was too expensive, can we at least maybe do 2 sides? So we priced out each of the 4 sides of the building. And then some other things that were smaller numbers, but we're at 18,825. Braun Russo will meet and or exceed our required MBE and WBE for the contract. So felt pretty good about that. It was within our budget. Tammy's worked hard on getting the funding put together, and as well as Stephanie through, I think, your committee. So I think we're in pretty good shape for this project to get moving. I received from Carla and her staff, a draft contract, which I forwarded off to, again, Matt Bannock to take a look at, just so we get his input and eyes on it. Again, it's another AIA contract. I hope to get the contract back from Matt tomorrow. He was hopeful of getting that done, but he had, as again, a lot of folks had this morning, a flurry of activity and emails and phone calls to catch up on. So, Carla?
Thank you. And just so you know, I did forward that draft contract onto the contractor so they could start pulling their bonds and insurance. The numbers aren't going to change, so the insurance and bonding company are likely going to be fine with it, even if we do have some other minor modifications to make to the contract. So if we're ready, I have got queued up here at least the floor plans for where we landed at the, I think these are the 95% set, which is really, really close to where we landed for the final design, unless there's any other questions first. Nope, good. So we are relocating all of the county elected official offices from Brookins into the county plaza, along with the sheriff and patrol and public defender, which is currently in the courthouse. So you can imagine this was a lot of folks that were relocating into this new space. On the first level, and I apologize, I think the screen is a little washed. Whoops. Maybe I can zoom in here. I can give you guys copies of this so you can look at them later. The Sheriff's Patrol will be on the ground level with access to the parking garage underneath the parking structure. And then the vote by mail will be on, let's see if I can, nope, it's not gonna do it for me, is it? Will be on this side right here. So the vote by mail processes will have access to the north door. And for those of you that were able to walk through the building about 6 months ago, that's over there where the on the lower level where you actually have ground access to the parking lot. On the second level, the main entrance is over on the south here, if you can see the cursor. Most of the public will come in through this entrance. The county board room will be here, which will also be utilized, actually the Putnam room right here, can be utilized for voting when you guys do have the voting processes. Most of the county clerks' offices are over here, along with their vault, and then there is a shared break room back here. And actually, you'll see on most all the floors there is a shared break room back here. On the 5th floor, which is all public defender, they have their own break room because they take over the entire floor. Third level is treasurer. I think it was assessor and board of review. And I think that was it on the third or on the second level. Again, there is a communicating stair here that's existing. Right now it goes down to the ground level. It will be removed from the ground level to the first floor, and then it will remain from first floor to second floor. So it really will be open to the public. It won't seem like the treasurer is removed from the public eye. It really creates this shared space, even over 2 levels. And these are the areas where most of the public will go to also. So most of the public will be able to access the places where they need to be at on the first and second level. The third level is county administration areas. And I believe GIS is back here in the northwest corner as well. And there's one other one, hang on. I think it was the auditor is on this floor as well. Fourth floor is primarily the sheriff's offices and investigation. That's this area right here. And hang on. Sorry, I don't remember who shared that floor with him. Maybe we moved.
We moved, it was the auditor, we moved from the third floor to the fourth floor, so they're at that would be the southwest corner.
Yeah.
And then IT's on the third floor.
Is on the third floor, that's right, that's right. Oh, let's see here. How do I get this back? There we go. All right. And then, like I said, fifth floor is public defender, and they take up the entire floor. That is really it in a nutshell.
If you'll send those to me, I'll be happy to forward them to the facility committee.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow. Couple of positive things. We have good control from the public as they come in off of the first floor, one entrance basically. There's two elevators that will service the 5 floors. They will not be able to get to the basement or lower level, as we call it. That'll be locked off because of sensitivity of what goes on down there with the street officers. When they do get to some of the other floors, they can only go into certain areas where the public has an ability to have a conversation, either talk with the treasurer or sheriff's office, assessor, et cetera. There'll be locked doors, in other words, that they can only gain assistance from when they're open for meetings or discussion or whatever. The elevator on the back side will really be for staff going in and out of the building. That'll be the main entrance for the staff to come in at. There's roughly 200 parking spaces attached, either on top of the deck or below the deck, and there's more underneath versus on top. We will park some of the courthouse folks who are renting spaces for currently from the city there, as well as folks transferring over here from Brookins. And then we'll have approximately 22 spots for the public to park on the upper deck, as well as obviously ADA. So some of the things that aren't answered yet that we're looking into is security. In the building, in the design and the bid, we do have video security as well as access controls. That'll be done with either a key fob or a card. We have not defined what that is yet, but will shortly. And then we're looking at a couple of systems that will help. There's a couple of systems that are available out on the market that I've shared with the sheriff. We're going to take a look at one of them. It's going to be put in over at the State Farm Center. And it's a kind of a combination of metal detector and video security. With the software they've designed, they can basically pinpoint, are you carrying a weapon of any kind, whether it's a knife, a gun, it could be in your backpack and it's smart enough that it understands and it's quick. It's not like being wanded or, having to take everything out of your bag, go through a metal detector. Sheriff's interested in it possibly for the courthouse. So, anyway, we'll continue to take a look at that as we get a little bit closer to getting this thing started. Questions?
What are the plans for Brookings?
Should we put them on the spot? We've really not talked about that yet. We've got to get to that point. As we get a little bit closer and the project gets started, we'll start having those discussions. Currently, Pod 200 is basically all of our staff except for about 3,000 square feet taken up by the Attorney General's office. Pod 100 is by about 3,000 square feet roughly for the planning and zoning, and then about 16,000 square feet for RPC. Pod 400 is the Park District, but they've notified us at some point they'll be building in between here and the elementary school down in Washington, and will be moving their offices out of here. They would love to still be able to operate out of the gym for a reduced fee, of course, less square footage. So approximately half the building could still be rented. We can look towards other renters if that's what direction the county wants to go, the board and our executive. I know that there's people looking and interested, but I think we'll have to have that discussion, and it's maybe something that's something that the board wants to take up and discuss, or it could start here at the facility committee and have a discussion there and move it forward. So, got any thoughts?
I know the previous board discussion had centered around selling Brookings if possible. We're not at the point where we can really do that. I do have a few ideas that I haven't acted on yet. I will keep people informed if I get information that's positive. I did talk with Delitza with RPC and ask what their intentions were in terms of staying or wanting to find another location. Did not get a real clear answer. They're here for the time being. But RPC, quite frankly, has been talking about moving somewhere else for the last 15 to 20 years. So really not a lot to report at this point. I know in conversations that I've had with Stan, we'd really like to be able to sell the building. It's a matter of finding a buyer, and I'll continue to let people know as I get more information.
I guess, I'm sorry, I'm looking at Dana, Jen, sorry about that, Jen. We didn't have room for planning and zoning?
They're in the building. She just did mention, they're in the building.
At
County Plaza, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
I mean,
Oh, yeah,
that was the last county.
We have moved everybody, well, not everybody, because RPC would love to be over there at a discounted rate, of course, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, they are there. Everyone is there, and then with the two big additions, obviously, are the sheriff's office and then public defender.
I mean, as Steve just said, one of the main reasons I went along with the county plaza, and I've been on this committee 5-6 years, but was to get rid of it. I mean, sell it. The county doesn't need to own more buildings. So that's, if you're wondering where I stand, it's fairly blunt. So, all right, that's all I got to say.
I think that was something we discussed too about the sheriff's office and downtown jail space, like what will we do with that? But I don't know if anything further has come from that either.
I don't know what Dana's thoughts on that were. I think it's probably a movable piece of property. I mean, Urbana has been trying to expand their business district, and so hopefully that could be moved also.
Steve? Oh, Aaron.
Oh, thanks, Jen. This is a very basic question. I wasn't able to make the walkthrough just about the building itself, but I haven't heard it mentioned, and I'll admit, even having seen the plans before, I didn't take a look at it, but just this thought just occurred to me. Is there a back stairway? I
Yes,
figured there probably was, but I just had never heard. But so that'll be controlled, obviously, too, and basically for staff only, correct? Yeah, and only to the floors that any person needs to get to.
The north stair will primarily be used by employees. However, we can't stop the public from exiting through there in the event of a fire. So they can get into the stair. It's just a matter of, can they get out of the stair on a certain floor? So that's, yeah, there's some controls there. Now, the south stair, I believe will remain open in both directions. So if the public does want to walk up the stairs, they can, yes.
I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure. I promised one of my caucus members that's not on this committee to ask about the safe removal on the first floor, because I know it's a pretty hefty price tag. And so is it because you have to remove it in order to have space for something? Is that the deal? Because it's like $350,000 to take out that safe.
I'll start, I'll let you fill in. We started with the premise when we sat down and were programming that we wanted to keep the safe. Reason being, we thought both county clerk's office and treasurer's office would best be suited to be on the first floor. County clerk really doesn't need a safe that size, but the treasurer doesn't need a safe that size either, but they could utilize it. So we really attempted to do that, and in our discussions, actually our first 2 or 3 renditions, it stayed. But when we got down to kind of final details and we saw what the clerk needed and the direction they were going, what the treasurer could need, we decided that it's probably in our best interest to take that out. It does take up a bit of square footage. Besides the massive weight to the building. I think the door's 7,500 pounds, let alone it's got 3-foot thick walls that have to be cut out. But we attempted at first to keep it and to let it be there, knowing that, it's basically a showpiece. Busey Bank didn't even close the door. And you would not close that door every day. It's too heavy, it's too cumbersome. You've got to pull a metal floor out to get the door to be able to close. Not everybody can lift it. So I just, it was unfortunate. It would have been a nice showpiece to have and to keep. But reality, we had to move the Shields Carter room, Putman room up to the first floor for not only for the board's sake, but also an access, but also for potential for voting. So we just had to make the decision that it was time that we needed to include that in the demo. I have yet, and actually I talked with Warren Russo today and asked them, and they don't have a firm price yet, so they don't know. They got 3 subs that they're working with that have the potential to do that. The door's got some value supposedly as well, so I don't know if and I haven't talked about this with them yet, but they may be able to recoup some of their funding. It's included in the bid, so we don't know. That's not a price breakdown that we asked for within the bid document. So I heard somebody say 500,000, not from anybody that is related to the county or whatever, and I'm going, that can't be right. Anyway, did I hit all the issues?
I think that was, yeah, everything, really. It just, again, just to reiterate what Dana said, we really did try to keep that. It's part of the building history, and it would have been a neat showpiece. However, just knowing the square footage that the county elected officials needed, it just, we were doing a lot of acrobats to keep it, and it just came down to the decision: do we keep it and build something new outside to compensate for the square footage that we needed? Well, that was really expensive real estate. Or do we just get rid of it and make the building what it needs to be for the next, 50 years? So.
Thank you. So what are our next steps now after design is 95% complete? I'm new to this group too. So design is 95% complete. You've selected a contractor. What do we do next?
Well, the good news is we're 100% complete with their documents. We bid it out. We opened up bids the 8th of December, I believe. Took to the December 15th county board meeting, a motion for awarding a contract, Braun Russo, who's local here in Champaign-Urbana. Union shop, minority owned, or actually women owned, female. No, excuse me, minority. Yeah, Jim, I forgot. Sorry, Jim. We are waiting on the contract I mentioned earlier. It's been delivered to me as a draft. I dropped it off with the state's attorney's office, hoping to get it back tomorrow. As soon as I get it back, we'll get any changes made that he is asking for, get that to them. They're waiting on the contract. I also had a conversation with Braun Russo this morning, and they're ready to get going, but they need the contract in place. So very similar, Jeff, to how we're handling the satellite jail. As soon as we get a contract in place, we'll schedule a meeting, architect, engineers, Braun Russo team, and spend some time going through everything, and hopefully come up with a preliminary schedule. They'll get back to their subs, contract with their subs. Subs will get their equipment and materials ordered, and then we'll figure out what the timeline is going to be for construction and put that together.
Thanks.
So I had this idea. I have not said this to anybody yet, but one of the things I think about the county is that a lot of folks don't know what the county is or what we do. We don't celebrate what we do particularly well. We just do it and then just like move on. Like the number one question I get from constituents is like, oh, it's the county board. What is that? One of the things I was thinking about is when we move to this new building, I think that it affords an opportunity for us to do a better job of that. And I was thinking about when we come into the public access area, like when people come in, perhaps having some panels that, you know what I mean, talk a little bit about Champaign County history, talk about farming in the county, you know what I mean, like talk about the university, like maybe we could work with Visit Champaign County, work with the Champaign County History Museum, take, I've done these kind of panels for other projects, so I know how much they cost. Take maybe a little bit of the ARPA money, because one of the things is to develop tourism and like that kind of thing. And maybe like have a little bit of like brand identity, you know what I mean? Like not just definitely better wayfinding than this building has. So like the members of the public just don't walk in circles until they find somebody that they, will tell them where they're going. But also I think just a little bit at the front end, like this is Champaign County, this is who we are, I think might not be a terrible idea. And I do think we have like the resources right now to actually make that happen. And I'd be super happy to help work on something like that. But the stuff that Visit Champaign County does is incredible. The stuff that the History Museum does is incredible. I think maybe if we all work together, we could do something that, could maybe be a little bit educational, but also a little bit like celebratory.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there is definitely better wayfinding in this building. We had a wayfinding consultant. There are also panels on the wall that explain to the public what each one of the elected officials do. It's really literally the what we do wall. And so I think that will help as well, celebrate a little bit about what is done at county government. The other idea is too is that right outside the county boardroom there is a long wall where the idea was that it would be really more curated art wall. And my understanding is that is it the Champaign Public Library or Urbana Library actually has an archive of many of, I think it's Urbana, isn't it? Has all of your guys' archives, and that to possibly work with the Urbana Library, like every 2 months, just to come in and curate a new display for that area.
I just wanted to say I was going to bring up the safe portion later in the meeting, and I appreciate all of the work that went into trying to keep it, because I know that was originally part of the plan, but ultimately understand the need for more public accessibility and making those spaces for board meetings and voting sessions easy to find and access. So thank you for trying. I think we're sticking with you for the next section as well. That'll be the update on the County Plaza parking deck renovation, ITB 2022-007.
Let me just update the new folks. So again, we bought the building, and as we, tore through it with our engineers and our architects, we got a structural engineer to come look at the parking deck. And it needed some help. We're obviously concerned. They've salted. It's got metal in it. It's got concrete. Had a pretty good top coat to keep water from penetrating the concrete, but there were some leaks. So we'll be replacing the coating that goes over the top, but we also needed to replace the middle ramp, or the vehicle ramp that's to the west, the pedestrian ramp, and both of these are right off of Main Street. And then there's a stair off of Broadway from the sidewalk. There's 2 steps up. So those things need to be replaced, the concrete, and resupported. They were poorly supported from down below. So that's been changed, that's been done. They poured concrete prior to Christmas. Let me regress here a minute. We did this, and we had bid documents put together and bid this thing out and had an opening on September 29th. Project went to the October board meeting for approval. The low bidder was Deuce Construction here in town. The low bidder price was $444,000 and some change. It's about a 2.5 month project if weather permits. They did, which is really good. They saw what was forecast, so they got the 3 areas cut out and resupported, put in new steel and rebar, and then poured concrete right before the big freeze prior to Christmas. Yes, there are blankets on it. It's doing great. We popped the blanket up the other day to take a peek at it and looked pretty good. They will begin, hopefully this week, starting down below underneath, working on connection pieces. There's a number of them that need to be sandblasted and repainted. Some need to be replaced. These are the pieces that are helping hold the decking that's hung up there on the steel and concrete together. So once we get down underneath, it really won't matter too much what Mother Nature does. The cold is really not going to impact until we go to paint what metal is exposed. So, Carly, got any additions?
Nope, I think that pretty much covers it. We keep Dana well informed.
Beth?
Did we have any issues with freezing pipes or anything during that freeze?
You know, we did, but none of the buildings that we're talking about tonight. The one place that occurred was here in this building. And it occurred in the same spot like 6 years ago. Again, it was on one of those nights that it was minus 30 or 40 with blowing wind. So it was in the IT hallway, pod 400, so it would be the northwest corner of this building. And it's a fire suppression line. So the line froze and it popped the sprinkler head. And so we had flow. Of course, that sets off the alarm. We get the calls. Happens, unfortunately, on the 24th at, 6 o'clock in the morning. So we've got to get our on-call guy to come in, and he gets RSQ, which is a local company that takes care of fire suppression lines. Gets them to fix it, put the new head back on, and he brought in a little additional heat for that area. We learned a lesson 6 years ago. We actually put in a small heater up above between the drop ceiling and the deck, just to try and maintain a temperature there. And those super sub-freezing temperatures just got us again. So we will wrap that pipe with heat trace tape, and we shouldn't have a problem. But that is the only problem that we experienced from the freezing temperatures, which frankly surprised us a little bit. We had anticipated maybe a couple more, but fortunately there was only one.
All right, nothing else on the parking deck? Nothing else for Carla? Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
All right, next up, I think, Dana, you get to go through kind of your brag list here, the county completed physical plant projects list for FY22.
So I set out on your debt, actually Dan set them out, but I did produce it. I just like to try and keep you informed about what we do and what goes on. And these are more of the larger kind of projects, things that we do. So we helped out the county clerk's office by installing 5 additional drop boxes. That took us about 2 weeks. Takes time. These are big, heavy boxes, so you got to dig a hole that's down 3 feet. Put in, steel and concrete. There's a sleeve that the box sits in. So it's a process, and then you got to work with each of the facilities to make sure that it gets in the right area, and then we're cleaning up and respective, and showing a good face for what the county's about. So did that. We mow and trim weekly, 44 acres around our property, plus 2 other homes in the community. They're actually vacant lots. Homes have been torn down. These are lots that have come back to planning and zoning that they're trying to sell. And there's one in Urbana and there's one in Champaign, and none of them are close, so you got to trailer your stuff and take it out there. One of the lots is pretty good size, and it's got a lot of really heavily overgrown vegetation, but anyway. Snow, we're responsible for snow removal for all of our facilities. We've got a number of 24-hour buildings, as you might imagine, the sheriff's office, METCAD, JDC, satellite jail. We don't have the nursing home anymore, which we're thankful for. That's a big lot to plow. Last year we had 13 inches of snow recorded here. They came in about 6 different events. It takes a lot. It takes us, if we've got a 4 or 5 inch snowfall, which we had that twice last year, it's an all-day event for all of our guys, frankly, to take care of that. Then the stuff around the courthouse, we have to push to the street and then get highway to help us to get it out of there because we block lanes. So we had a major change. We helped the courthouse with their staff for changing up the parking. That affected both the courthouse staff and the public. We no longer allow the public to park in the courthouse parking lot. We have it for our staff. There's about roughly 102 spots for staff. However, we're still having a problem. And staff will come back from lunch occasionally or show up in the morning and there's a public member parked in their spot. So we will be following the same course that we're taking with County Plaza. We're going to put in parking arms, if you will. So staff members will fob in and out. The public access will only be to the ADA spots on the north side of the lot. And we'll have to put some concrete and so forth to block access, and our staff will have to come in off of the south side of the parking lot. And we do work orders. Work orders are basically requests from various departments who have access. So all of the departments have been shown how to put on a work order for us. So we took care of 169 work orders, and that can be painting, it could be removing a desk, it could be moving file cabinets, or it could be, fixing a problem with the heat or cooling or restroom. It's kind of a you name it that comes in. And then we issued 202 preventive maintenance tasks. What are those? We take care of our HVAC system, so we ask our guys, and they're trained, to go in and inspect the inside of our air handlers. They'll either clean the filters or replace them. We try and replace them at least twice a year. If they can be cleaned, we'll clean them. If not, we just replace them. Check your fan motors. Check your blades. Oil any of the wheels that are in there. Check your belts. Make sure you check wiring and that it's tight. So all those kinds of things we do, and they're issued for each of our buildings. We have maintenance staff who are assigned to each of our buildings. So they get these individually. So it's really 202 preventive maintenance stuff for each employee. So one of the problems we continue to have with the jails, our inmates break windows. They got a lot of time and they get bored and they do things, and unfortunately they find ways to break windows, usually involving a meal tray. Remodeled and painted about 400 square foot of offices over at Animal Control this year. Painted a number of offices at the sheriff's office, courthouse, Brookins. We don't have painters, but some of our guys are really skilled, and we find that when we can do this kind of work is generally during the winter when we can't do some of the outside work that goes on. So we will try and help and paint. One of the things that really helped us in the past, and it's unfortunate, but the gentleman who used to be in charge of probation had a number of painters who had gotten into trouble, and to do their community service, they painted. And so they would paint at the courthouse in particular. It's our highest area of the public having access. And they did just a fantastic job of keeping up. So we basically were able to paint hallways and some of the courtrooms, and really kind of keep up with that. Unfortunately, Joe was retired, and Mike Williams was not interested in running that part of the issue or the program. We'll talk to the new person who's replacing Mike and see if they have an interest, which I'm hoping that we can convince them to do, because that is a great savings to us. But like I said, I don't have a full-time painter, but I've got some guys that have some great skills, but we don't have time to keep up painting the way it really needs to be done.
Can you let me in when you have that conversation on the painters? I might have some ideas on how to get us some painters.
Okay. You have ideas about it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You want to talk about it later?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You guys can read the list, but it's, there's a lot. We were busy. It was a busy year. Besides all the other stuff that we, I won't say it's mundane, but it's kind of the day-to-day stuff of taking care of your buildings. I did not list the custodians on here. We've got 12 custodians that take care of our buildings. Again, like our maintenance guys, they're assigned to various buildings. Some of the smaller buildings are taken care of by folks who are working here at Brookins and over at Elias. So we do charge back for Elias for custodial work. Same thing that we do for RPC and for MedCat. So we get a little back in return there.
Any questions on these? Jeff?
Thanks, Dana. I'm going to ask questions for understanding, to help me understand as a new person. So on the, I looked at the 10-year facility plan, and then when I look at the 10-year facility plan, the projected projects for 2022, I'm not seeing them on this list. Is there a change to the facility plan for the 10 years, or is it get updated every year? Questions like that.
Okay. So in, 21, they're running together. We had a major hailstorm here in July of, it had to be 21, I guess. Yeah. That damaged a number of roofs, a bunch of HVAC equipment that we did not have hail guards on. We have hail guards now, so we won't be making those errors again. So some of those were on in 21, 22 and 23. Bottom line is we need to go through and redo the list because we had a number of things that have fallen off the list because of we were able to replace those roofs and the equipment that was damaged with insurance funding. So all of that work actually has been just been concluded. It's been, almost 2 years. And we finally finished the last little piece. I'm looking at Richard. I think the last piece was, yeah. So we're finally done with that. I need to write a report to the insurance company and share them with them the dollars that we spent so they can see that we did spend the money that they forwarded to us, which we'll be working on now. But at that same time, once that report's written, I will get on the updated list for, the next 8 to 10 years. We are taking care of, since we did hold a couple of things, and we talked about with Darlene and Tammy not doing a couple of things this year, so we could go ahead and take care of the county plaza parking lot out of capital asset funding for that. But yes, we need to update that. That's a subject I've talked to Jenny about and Steve. So can't promise it'll be done by February, but certainly by March.
Thanks, Dana. Just to my curiosity, looking at the 10-year plan and this is what we're doing or not doing, and I know plans are plans, they don't always happen, but I guess they get refreshed. And then just one more question. So the amount of PMs that your team does and the work orders, is that pretty much consistent year over year, or is this a banner year for PMs, or how does that normally work?
I would say that the work orders fluctuate from year to year, depending upon
On the need, right?
the needs of the staff in our facilities.
And PMs are mandatory, right?
PMs basically are
Scheduled.
virtually the same. They're year to year, and kind of month to month. They all come out at the same time. They get a little bit longer as we change equipment. Some of the equipment is a little bit more specific and a little bit more involved than some of the really old air handlers, RDX units that we have or had here. So, but they come out once a month. And our guys, we've got a very inexpensive software program called Facility Tree. Does a nice job for us. It tracks those work orders. They get assigned. Guys have to click off on them, and then they put in the information about what they did and when they did it, and so we get that feedback. We know what's going on. The PMs, they have to do the same thing. They're issued a long list of things that they have to do, and then they have to, sit down at the computer and type in exactly what they did. They take notes, and when they're in the mechanical rooms or on the roofs, and write down the information so that we have it. We can kind of build a portfolio, if you will, on the equipment for each of the facilities.
Thanks, Dana.
All right, I think that's everything we've got. No presiding officers report. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 7th at 6:30 p.m. Nothing to go on the consent agenda following this meeting, so we are adjourned. Dana?
Other business?
Other business. Oh, sorry, I thought other business.
Other business. Since,
Oh, your microphone?
yeah, I'm sorry. If you got something?
No. I put your microphone on.
Sorry, thanks. Since we've got 5 new folks, new to the committee, not necessarily new to the board, I thought I'd bring this up again. We do tours of our facilities. I thought it'd be a good idea to bring that up again. Didn't have too many takers from the last facility committee, but if folks are interested, what we can do is arrange a tour prior to the meeting. So I don't know if your work schedules or if you can get off at and be someplace like at 5 o'clock and take an hour to kind of walk through a building and see it. And if that's amenable, we'll start rescheduling that for future meetings, if that's okay.
Yeah, and then that reminded me, we had talked about something else that you've brought up a couple times tonight. I want to make sure everybody knows, feel very comfortable to ask all the questions you want in these meetings. I know acronyms get thrown around and construction terms and things that we might not all be necessarily the most familiar with in our day-to-day lives, but we're all here as representatives of people from the county, so if we want to bring it down to the level of somebody who needs that basic understanding, that might be us. So thank you for asking questions, and definitely Dana is welcome to any and all questions. Feel free to reach out and speak during the meetings or anytime. He's got his contact information on the county website too. So I think that's it for real this time. And then we will be adjourned at 7:59 p.m.